Hello again, Internet. EJ and Rudo coming back at you once again with not necessarily Avs news, but at the very least some actual hockey news as things are happening a little bit here and there. Not a ton, but
yeah. Teams are getting back on the ice. Teams are firing folks. Teams are signing players. It's like almost like business as usual.
Almost.
We have a press conference tonight.
I know, that was weird. I saw that. Actually get to talk to a hockey player.
Yeah, I got that email and was like, okay. All right. I guess I have work to do tonight.
Well, today's episode of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast is brought to you by Green Mountain Dental Group. And all you need to do to get a free Sonicare toothbrush is schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam with them. They're down in Lakewood, just 15 minutes from Denver, and they're huge Colorado sports fans, just like everyone here at DNVR. Plus, they've been one of our longtime partners, so show them some love, and that's helping us here at DNVR as well. And taking care of your teeth is the first step to good health. So schedule that cleaning, x-ray, and exam, and go get your free Sonicare toothbrush at Green Mountain Dental Group today. Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, presented by Davidson's Beer, Wine, and Spirits, where I go to get all of my Breckenridge Brewery as often as possible. I'm Rudo. He's AJ Haefele. On today's episode, obviously, the news of the day is Jason Botterill has been fired by the Buffalos Sabres as their GM. I believe they also fired his assistant GM as well. And
tough day for that guy.
Yeah, their executive vice president is now the GM of the team, Kevin Adams. Anyway, not the point. The point is, Buffalo continues to struggle with a cycle of trouble at the GM position, not quite getting it right, feeling like they're living the perpetual rebuild of Groundhog's Day at this point. And we can start there, and eventually the point of this is to work it back into the Avs and how they might be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there at some point, but for right now, it was just interesting to see that they made this decision. You can't blame Botterill for not trying. He did a lot of things in his years there. It's not like he's been there a really long time. He's made upwards of 20 trades. He's spent money. He's gotten rid of some bad money. He's done.
He certainly did things.
He's tried to do a lot of stuff. You know, if you were to pull up, you know, exactly what he's done for them, it's a long list of things that some of it is confusing. Like Marcos Scandella was a great example of how I think they have bigger problems than just talent, because Marcos Scandella was super reliable for years in Minnesota, right? Yep. And ends up in Buffalo, doesn't do anything for them. Like, there's nothing there.
Yep.
And then leaves Buffalo and immediately finds
gets better. Yeah.
Yeah. Immediately reverts to previous form and ends up with a multi-year deal in St. Louis. Like,
yeah, with the reigning Cup champs, no less.
Right. And so, important context there, because it's not like he just joined a bottom feeder and was like,
here's minutes. It was, no, this team is actually good.
And fit in. And, you know, maybe Scandella is a guy that needs to have a certain level of talent around him for him to be able to be at his best. You know, maybe he can't be a leader and help kind of turn the defense around. You know, maybe that's what we learned from that. But it sure is interesting that guys with long histories go to Buffalo, and it's
different
iffy.
Players there, to say the least. And
you know, they get a guy, they go out and they get guys. You know, they like Brandon Montour, Colin Miller, and
it just seems, if you're asking, especially someone like a Marco Scandella, to just be a solid defensive defenseman for you, the Sabres have a Dahlin. The Sabres have a Ristolainen that you can play that guy against. Why aren't they getting the best out of him?
Yeah, well, and Ristolainen's been interesting because all metrics would suggest that he's just spent his entire career drowning and getting caved in because he's playing top pairing minutes, and he's just not capable of that. We don't know what Ristolainen is capable of and where the right role for him is because we've only ever seen him play top pairing minutes in Buffalo, and he gets rocked on the metric side of things. He puts up good points, and that's where his value comes in. That's where you say, hey, like it's not like he's not doing anything. He's really good on the power play. He generates plenty of offense, but there's nothing there defensively that suggests he should be in that kind of a role. And because they've never been able to build an adequate defense around him, they've never been able to put him in a better role.
Yeah. It's just the reality of the situation. Other than when they managed to draft Dahlin, he hasn't gotten the help around him on defense that he's needed. And like you said, Scandella, a nice piece, not someone you bring into play on your top pair.
Sure. And like them going out and Brandon Montour and Colin Miller, like those are both like guys with upside, guys with some track record of success, and you're hoping that they're good.
I mean, nonetheless,
and
both
none of it
of
goes
them
well.
Having one of their worst seasons of their careers.
Right. And like they get Yoki Haru out of Chicago.
Yep.
Like, which I thought was theft for freaking Alex Nylander.
The deal they made, it certainly seemed good for them.
Yeah, and then Yoki Haru was okay.
So what stinks in Buffalo then?
It's a question.
You can fire your GM all you want. He can't make the players play better on the ice.
Right, like his job was to build a team on the ice, and he tried. He fleeced Carolina in that Jeff Skinner trade.
Yep.
And then because Jeff Skinner didn't want to go, we knew he wanted to be there, but he also wanted to get paid. And then he had the big year,
40 goals, and then all of a sudden you have to pay him $9 million.
Right. Well, and like they got strong armed into giving him that deal because it was like, okay, pay him $9 million or let him leave for free.
You get nothing out of this. Yeah.
And it's like and at the time, of course, they have the cap space.
Yep.
But it's just like, what do? This is a bad deal. But it's either make the bad deal and keep the player, or he walks and you're nowhere.
Yep.
And that $9 million probably doesn't even get spent on anything meaningful.
Yeah. And then you have Jack Eichel, who's at $10 million, which, don't get me wrong, Jack Eichel's worth every single penny.
I have no problems with Jack Eichel at $10 million.
But the numbers stack up quick. All of a sudden, a completely faded Kyle Okposo is making $6 million.
Yeah.
You have, for some reason, traded for Wayne Simmons at the deadline to not make the playoffs, even with 24 teams.
Yeah. They had the Marcus Johansson. They were the team that won the Mojo sweepstakes, which we talked about so much last summer.
They won the Mojo sweepstakes, and they have him for one more year. And then the entire rest of their forward core's contracts are up at the end of this season.
Yeah.
They have 4 forwards signed for next year. And half of the ones they don't have signed are hitting UFA.
Yeah. And like guys they've had for years, where it's, they were the team that ended up with Jimmy VC.
Yep.
Like that was a long running thing. He went through Buffalo multiple times in order to get them to get him to actually play
on the ice.
And then, the Zemgus Girgensons and Johan Larsson have been there forever.
Yep.
Dominic Cahoon was actually, I thought, a decent little acquisition for them at the deadline. that's got some chance. Victor Olofsson is the only guy that is a draft pick that's actually done anything for them.
Casey Middlestat still toiling away in the AHL at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, Victor Olofsson is going to get Calder votes.
I mean, he's not going to get many.
Yeah, he'll get 5th place votes.
Sure. Nonetheless, yeah, it certainly has worked out well for them, as he was called Victor Golofsson for a good stretch of this season. But
yeah, for the first 30 games of the year when he was leading all the rookies in scoring, and it was like, what the hell is
Who
Victor
is this?
Olofsson? Yeah. So it's not the point of all this, and they did leave. They watched Lawrence Pilot leave and go to Russia for 2 years.
Yep,
and that was a guy that if they were more invested in their analytics, they wouldn't have let walk, because his underlines all said that he was a solid defender that they should keep around and give more ice time to. Now, we've also seen the analytics will say that about a lot of guys who are third pairing guys, and they're in very specific
does it end up being
roles.
Actually, on the whole, yeah.
I mean, Patrick Weirkosh was an analytics darling for years in Ottawa.
So was Brandon Gormley, man, in Arizona.
And like Weirkosh leaves leaves Ottawa, comes to Colorado, and he's out of the league within 2 years.
Yep.
And it's like sometimes the coaches know what they're doing, and the analytics aren't. You know, the analytics are more deceiving, and they're more a result of a coach putting them in a proper role, instead of looking at them and saying that guy should get a bigger role. The point being, that was a guy that maybe had a little bit of upside that they could have gotten something out of. And this is just sort of emblematic of the organization as a whole. Even little victories they don't get to enjoy much of because they don't end up meaningful.
So to circle back, originally I said, how much do you put of this on Botterill? And look, yes, he tried to build a team, but there are some big swings that didn't work out here. And then it feels like there's a lot of bit parts with all the expiring contracts. With, they couldn't retain Robin Leonard, so right now they have Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark in net. And at a certain point, do all the puzzle pieces just stop fitting together?
Well, when it comes to like Carter Hutton, like they moved on from Leonard because it was like, hey, at some point the relationship is just bad and you've got to move
Sure.
on.
It didn't work out for them, as Leonard figured it out almost immediately. But
well, and even if you go back and you look at Leonard's Buffalo career, he was at least solid in the majority of his Sabres career.
I mean, he always had the high-end flashes, right? It was just...
Yeah, well, and he had 2 really, really good years for the Sabres, and it was never enough for them. And it was always something, right?
Yep.
So it was just a divorce that needed to happen. That was a relationship that had run its course. But then, go out and your response is to go and get Carter Hutton and give him money. And then put him in net, and it's just like, what's the upside? Like, what are you actually getting with this decision? Now maybe the problem of getting guys to come to Buffalo is the real problem here. Carter Hutton was the one that just said yes. So it's an element that we haven't talked about here, where players aren't exactly going to be beating down the door to go to Buffalo. One, it's not everyone's favorite city to live in. It's cold, it's dark, it's not the fun part of New York. It's in Toronto's shadow. It's
the little brother.
Yeah, but there are positive, the fan base is rabid. They are freaking crazy there for their sports teams. And respect, players love that. They're attracted to that atmosphere where the fans care. And players have egos. And being in a place that if you're the one to turn it around, you're legend forever. That's got to be intriguing. I mean, you look at the Cleveland Browns. Imagine the guy that ends up being the quarterback when the Cleveland Browns eventually win a Super Bowl someday.
Yeah.
Like legend forever.
Yeah, sure. But how it feels like Buffalo's stuck in the middle. It doesn't feel like they're the franchise that has been in the dumpster forever. Granted, they missed the playoffs 9 years in a row.
Right. But that doesn't mean a bunch of bottom 5 finishes. That's why they've been picking picked
Right.
8th and picked 7th. And
stuck in mediocrity.
Yeah. We're there.
In a couple of years of tanking that ultimately they failed to get the guy they were trying to get. But
yeah, they had the 2 hardcore years of tanking where they were after McDavid. They ended up with Eichel. Pretty solid consolation prize, but not, in the end, Eichel and Dahlin are foundational building blocks that you should be able to build your franchise around.
Yeah. The
fact that they haven't done that yet, and it's only been 2 years in terms of Dahlin, but how much more time can you really take? What's coming in terms of the pipeline? Dylan Cousins was top pick last year. Do they really have to rely on them getting lottery luck this year and getting a Lafreniere or a Byfield?
Right. It just seems, where did all the talent go?
Yeah. Like, where is that even the problem?
That is a question that we will continue to explore. But first, we have to acknowledge Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. They have their Mile High City Copper Lager representing us here in Denver, as all of their beers really do, whether it be the Colorado Core, the Avalanche Amber, the Vanilla Porter, you name it. They have a beer for you, no matter what kind you like. And you can get it from their farmhouse down in Littleton. You can call 303-803-1380 for pickup from 12 to 8 p.m. and get $5 off when you use code DNVR, or even pick up a meal like lunch or something like that. If you can't head down there, you can always get it delivered from Davidson's or head down to your nearest grocery or liquor store. And we also now have sports betting, as golf has returned officially. They just wrapped up their first tournament last weekend, and you can head on over to DraftKings and make a bunch of bets on that, including a sign-up bonus of up to $1,000 with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Don't worry if you haven't been able to take advantage of it yet, as the action will continue at DraftKings Sportsbook as long as they possibly can have sports, which hopefully are permanently back in most cases. So head over to the app right now and check out all they have to offer. Again, you can download that top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app and get $1,000 for signing up and using code DNVR. They're going all out with the sign-up bonus with that DNVR code. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25x playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, which, first of all, it does feel nice to not be covering baseball right now. Sorry, Drew. But Buffalo, in particular, is an interesting team. You see them fire their GM, and this isn't the first time that the Vultures have cocked an eye towards the Buffalo Sabres. We'll put it that way. I believe if you go search YouTube right now for Buffalo fire sale, you will find a video about how everything must go from the Buffalo Sabres from about 10 years ago. So
yeah, God, those Sabres. It's amazing that 10 years has done nothing for the franchise, that nothing has changed in those 10 years. And, it's something that Avs fans should at least find relatable, not on that level, because Colorado didn't have that kind of problem. Like,
they just built it up, tore it down repeatedly.
Well, Colorado fell into a couple of playoff appearances, and that can seduce a team to do certain things one way or the other. And
they try to accelerate when they shouldn't. And
Right, like the Avs made the playoffs in 2010, immediately after that great draft class.
Yep.
Instead of building off of that, because they were wildly lucky and Craig Anderson had a career year, instead of building off of that and having another good draft and blah 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 blah, they went out, they traded their first round pick for Semyon Varlamov. They trade 2 young players for Eric Johnson. Like they make
it immediately. Yeah.
Right. They made big moves to try and solve their problems, their biggest problems. And like, you can't blame a team for getting aggressive like that, like how they got aggressive. And then they also, where Colorado was a little different, they ended up with top 5 picks.
Yep.
Duchesne at 3, Landeskog at 2, McKinnon at 1. Like, you go and you look at Buffalo, they have 2 1-1s. Or they have a 1-2 and a 1-1 in Eichel and Dahlin.
Yep.
And then they've got a slew of top 10 picks. And as we've learned the hard way, like, you're kind of at the mercy of the draft class when you're in that range where you're just missing out on the elite guys. And you should be able to get high-end guys, but there are always busts in the back half of the top 10. And
unfortunately for Buffalo, they've found them more often than not.
You look at 2016 and look at the Clayton Keller,
yep,
Sergachev, even Tyson Jost, and then there's Casey Middlestat, the guy who doesn't work out. It ends up in Buffalo.
That was 2017. But
Sorry,
2016 isn't wrong because that was Alex Nylander.
Right. That's the Nylander draft where,
yeah,
I mean,
you're taking Tyson Jost at 10 times out of 10 over Nylander at 8.
Right. Like, just given what they've done in the NHL, you're like, but Buffalo would be like, hey, Tyson Jost, okay, like, not totally in love, but pretty solid.
Yeah, and you look at Middlestat's drafts, not quite as good, but behind him, Martin Necas, Nick Suzuki. You go even further down, Robert Thomas, Philip Cheadle.
But and like, Necas is a guy that you would take today.
Yeah,
easily. And over what Middlestat has done, and was drafted like very quickly.
That's not to mention, had they tanked a little bit more that year or had lottery luck, do they end up with Miro Heiskanen, Cale Makar, or Elias Peterson instead of having to pick Casey Middlestat at 8?
Right.
And that let's be honest, the top end of that 2017 draft is miles ahead of the rest of it.
Definitely. I mean, even like we bag on New Jersey for Nico Hischier, but
yeah, that dude is crushing Casey Middlestat's career in half.
Like, Buffalo would straight up kidnap someone to get Nico Hischier in their 2C job.
They would take Nolan Patrick as is with all of the injuries over Casey Middlestat.
Like they would, and Nolan Patrick would be a step forward.
Yep.
So I mean, it's
just been too many first round misses.
Well, it's like that, and then it's at the same time this is where ownership, this is where Colorado ownership and Buffalo ownership are a little different, because I think Buffalo's ownership wants to win, and they care about winning, and they've been too eager to cut checks.
Yep.
Because that's how you end up, they had to buy out Ville Laino.
Yep.
You have Kyle Lepozo on your books, and all they had to do was ask any New York Islanders fan or watcher if that was going to be a good idea, if that contract was a good idea. Like, no. The New York Islanders have been desperate to keep talent on there, and they were like, too rich for our blood.
Yep.
Like, that's when an organization is okay losing a talent like that. It's such a signal. Like, they weren't dying to lose a Pozo, but they didn't mind it. And that should have been a really big red flag. And that's sort of the thing with Buffalo is everywhere you turn, they've misevaluated. They went hard after Jimmy Vesey twice. I forgot about Sam Reinhart. He was a top pick too.
He was their second. Yeah.
Yeah, he was second overall in 2014. It's just that 2014 was a year that in my mind doesn't exist.
They got the 2 first overall picks correct, and they got the second overall pick, or the 2 second overall picks and the first overall pick they got correct.
Yeah.
Before that, their best first round pick maybe of this decade is Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah.
Who has been wildly overrated.
Who's been it's complicated with him, kind of the way that it's complicated with Nikita Zadorov in Colorado. Who was also a Buffalo first rounder.
Like, we just went over the Avs first round picks, and with all of the solidness in there, you compare that to what Buffalo has done since 2009. Zach Kassian, good NHL player, but not a top 6 player, and did not stay in Buffalo.
Yeah, the big thing I think we're about to see here is did not stay in Buffalo.
Yep. Mark Pysyk, I mean, yeah, again, he's an NHLer. Actually did spend 4 years there, but is he high impact? Not really. Joel Armia, same kind of thing, only played 1 year in Buffalo. Grigorenko, we all know that story here in Avalanche land. Then you have Risto, Reinhart, and Eichel when they were in their true tank years.
Yeah.
And then
they had Risto and Zadorov in the same year.
Yeah, Zadorov as well, who they traded away with the pick immediately after him of JT Compher. And both of those guys, you can say what you want about them, they're NHL players.
Yep.
Then they have Reinhart, Eichel, and then you get into the current era of just miss with Nylander, who's now traded away, Middlestat, who now can't stay in the NHL. Sure, they got Dahlin, and neither of us are particularly high on Dylan Cousins as a 7th overall pick.
Kudos, he did have a great year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll see there. We'll see what the upside ends up being, because that was always the problem with Cousins. Anyway,
it's a funny thing. Right?
The other thing we haven't talked about here is the fact that they traded Ryan O'Reilly for peanuts.
Yep. They acquired him.
They acquired him. Honestly, they won that trade, although it's not like a huge significant win. Colorado got two NHLers out of it.
3 NHLers in the short term. Because Grigorenko did play 2 full seasons here.
But I mean, come on. They get 2 real NHLers out of it, and Buffalo got a 1C until Jack Eichel, which happened that day. So that set up their future. That set up their centers 1-2 down the middle. They should have been just fine with that. That should have been golden.
Did absolutely nothing with it, and then traded O'Reilly for, like you said, basically nothing.
Well, right, and like Tage Thompson was a guy that was an obvious one-dimensional player who was going to have a problem.
Yep,
and I think it was like a first and a second round pick, and then like these older guys where it's like you're Sobotka, and it's a waste of time. But like the top prospect isn't a top prospect, and the first round pick is late. And like even then, it's just like it ended up being the last first round pick. Yeah. I think they used it on Ryan Johnson, who I loved, but
yep.
Regardless,
look at sure. Like you have it, they were expiring contracts, so in that way they saved a little bit of money. But even then, they really didn't, because Patrick Berglund and Vladimir Sobotka's contracts are still on their cap hit.
Right. And basically what they did is they gave away the best player in that deal, and they didn't get even 20 cents on the dollar.
Right. I mean, maybe Sobotka gets you 10 cents, maybe.
I mean, I think the first round pick will determine that deal, just how bad that deal goes. Because was it Berglund or Sobotka that just left this year?
Berglund just bounced. Sobotka is on injured reserve.
Okay. So they didn't get anything out of it.
Yep. They do still have a second in 2021, but I mean, let's be honest, that's chump change.
Right. Unless they get a really high end player out of that pick, like
yeah, barring something weird happening, but it's just not come together at all, and we've seen the swings. Right, they draft all of these forwards to set themselves up, Reinhart, Eichel, and then they have no defense. They cannot put the defense together behind them. So what do? Eventually they come back around. They finally get Dahlin. They think they can put it all together, and then Okposo falls off a cliff. And all of a sudden it's literally a one-line team. They cannot put it together. And it's at this point where Buffalo, do they start considering burn it down and start again? And and
build just around Dahlin.
Right. Just say, look, this has not worked. We need to shed cap because they finished out of the playoffs, and if not for injured reserve, they were on pace to be less than $1 million under the salary cap.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, we mentioned it earlier. They have a lot of money coming off
this season.
The books.
So do they say, look, let's just let everybody walk? Start again, except that this has been a failed decade, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where, the guys, they let Simmons, Frolik, VC, Gergensons, Larson all go.
You think Gergensons? All the other ones, I think for sure.
I mean, Gergensons is just, you look at his career, I mean, he's a fourth line player. Like, who cares?
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but he's been one of those players that are kind of, you tie them to the franchise.
Okay. And
for all I know, Gergensons doesn't even want to come back, so who knows? But
I'm not prioritizing a guy who's averaging like 18 points over the last 4 years. Like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah,
he's just not a priority for me.
Just to make it easy, that means all of the UFA forwards are not coming back.
Yeah, that's it. I would just cut them all out, and that's where you put in. You good Lord, this is such a waste. The land of prospects.
Yep, it's not great.
You put in you put in Cousins, you put in Asplund, you put in Middlestat, and
you say go, right?
And okay, let's see how this goes. Maybe this goes well, and maybe Middlestat turns it around. Whatever, but give those guys minutes. Give them meaningful minutes. Let them play their way through it. Let Casey Middlestat figure it out. Because I don't think that it's doing him any good.
Toiling away, yeah.
Well, he has 25 points in the first full season, right? And it's all right. Well, that's obviously a disappointment, but let's see. Put him up in the lineup. Put him with the better of the guys, because he's not a guy that's going to excel in a bottom six role. So put him in the position. You put him with you have Skinner with Eichel. Put Reinhart with Middlestat, and then if you have Cousins on the right wing on one of those guys, or have Cousins be in the center and have him play with Reinhart and Middlestat, whatever, right? Just put your skill with your skill and just let it ride. See how it goes. Same thing with Tage Thompson. Just put these guys in positions where they can at least be in a comfort zone, and don't go out and spend a bunch of money on guys who are 32 years old, so that they can prop you up and be the difference between a 75-point team and a 65-point team. Let your young players determine that. That was the one thing that I think Colorado deserves a hell of a lot of credit for, was that they came off a 48-point season, and they said, okay, we'll let the kids decide. We just went vet heavy, and we bottomed out. Got rid of all those guys. Got rid of a lot of those guys off of that team and just said, okay, bring them, Tyson Jost and Alex Kerfoot, Dominic Toninato, JT Convert. It was just rookie after rookie after rookie.
Rantanen on the top line. Yeah.
Right. Like, put these guys in these positions. And Mikko Rantanen coming off of, what was it, a 35-point year, 38-point year?
I believe. Did lead the team in goals, but yeah.
Right. But it was like, okay, rookie year. Like, if Mikko Rantanen had that rookie this year,
it would be disastrous. Yeah.
Well, it was like, he wouldn't have been like in the top 7 or 8 of the rookies this year.
Yep.
So, it's commit to your youth and commit to an identity. Figure out exactly who you want to be and go for that. Play into that. Coach to that. Don't get a coach in Ralph Kruger and make him and say, okay, well, he's going to coach however he wants to coach.
Play to your
have a freaking plan.
Yep. I can't disagree with that. Unfortunately, I think the plan for a lot of teams around the league right now is to pick those bones, but we'll get to that in the third period. As first, if you need a plan for going back to school, MSU Denver Online puts a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. MSU Denver is the Colorado institution providing rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. MSU Denver graduates use their relevant degrees to land coveted jobs. Let's be honest, this is a pretty coveted job as far as I'm concerned. I'm very happy to have landed it. And I got my degree from MSU. Sure, it was in computer science, but nonetheless.
Not the point, Rudolph.
Yeah, exactly. And some of our very own staff members here at DNVR are even taking MSU Denver online classes right now over the summer. So jump on it now. It's a great opportunity, whether it's your first time going to school or if you're a returning student or if you're just looking for something new, whether it be online or in the classroom. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by Davidson's with Rudo and AJ. We've had the conversation about Sam Reinhart multiple times already, and I'm trying to hold back the hype. I'm building the dam here because it's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen.
Both of us feel confident that this is not a realistic conversation.
Yeah. But then Buffalo misses the playoffs in a 2014 format, and then they fire their GM.
As the 25th team.
Yeah, by one team, they miss. They fire their GM. The situation is a struggle. They're going to have to re-sign or extend or find new players in UFA that, as we just mentioned, you know what? Sometimes Buffalo has to pay extra for guys. They're stuck with Skinner's contract. Presumably, they're holding on to Eichel. All of a sudden, that's $6 million or $7 million or whatever Reinhart is going to ask. Does that fit? I mean, I don't know.
It fits. I don't think they have a problem with it fitting. So much as their real problem is what's next.
Yep.
They have Dahlin coming off of his ELC next year.
Yep.
He's going to be looking at a different defenseman market because Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes are also going to be signing contracts.
Yep.
And I believe Heiskanen as well.
Yeah, I think so.
So we're talking that market is going to look way different. Whatever it ends up looking like, Dahlin already has Dahlin after 2 years, he already has the credentials to ask for what Thomas Chabot did.
Yep.
Which was the 8x8. And I think that's where a lot of these people, a lot of the agents are going to start with that contract. And I think we're going to see every single one of Heiskanen, Dahlin, Makar, and Hughes surpass that deal. I think all four of them, with Heiskanen being the only one that maybe comes in more of on like a Provorov. But I think Chabot should be the benchmark for all four of those guys. So that Dahlin contract it's not like they're, unless they want to do like a 2-year bridge deal, which why would they? They should just get this guy locked up and not mess with it. This is one of the few easy things that they have on their plate, and then go from there.
So let's be generous and say Dahlin signs for 8.5.
Okay.
You add in Eichel's contract, Skinner's contract, and presumably Kyle Okaposo's contract is unmovable.
No contract is unmovable. We've learned that.
Are they really going to give up picks in a rebuild to move out Kyle Okaposo's contract?
No, but Kyle Oposo's contract could. I mean, I think it's getting to the point where 3 years left at $6 million. You might wait one more year and then have the buyout conversation.
Okay, well, you can have the buyout conversation in a year. Let's talk about at the end of the 21 season when they have to pay Dahlin $8.5 million.
Okay, and they've got Reinhart for 7. Let's just say 7.
They have Reinhart for 7, and then you add in Ristolainen at 5.4.
Well, I think Ristolainen's getting moved this summer, but sure.
So, well, we can add, we can subtract. If they have those 6 players, that's $45.9 million. All
right, so it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little over half of their salary cap.
Yep.
The thing is that they also will be losing all these all these old ass veterans that they don't need.
Overpaid like $4.3 million for Michael Frolik. Sure.
Yeah, right. Like they cut all of those guys loose, and none of these guys come close. You know, Victor Olofsson, Dominic Cahoon's next deals will probably at most be like they combine for what Michael Frolik is making.
Yeah.
And then you add in ELCs, add in Asplund, add in Middlestat, add in Cousins. If they get a little bit of lotto luck here next week, 10 days from now, when the lottery happens, and they end up in the top 3, add in that ELC too. Like, they will be so ELC heavy that they'll be able to figure it out. That I'm not too worried about it in terms of money. The big thing is you have the realistic conversation. Players are unhappy. Players who have been there are unhappy there. Eichel's increasingly annoyed. Sam Reinhart had certainly one high-profile run-in with the media this year after the perception that he dogged it on a back check.
Yep.
I watched it and didn't think it was egregious. I thought
it wasn't great, but
I can understand where the media member asked that question. I can also understand where he got annoyed by it. So yep. I didn't think it was. I'll just say this: I've seen Nathan McKinnon quit way harder on a play.
It happens,
and you know.
So the point I'm trying to get to here, then, is it all just that perception of players wanting out? Is that how the league takes advantage of Buffalo here?
Yeah, I think that would have to be it. But Buffalo doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to move these guys out. If they did want to move one or two of them, they need to have something very specific in mind. They can't take on bad money like they did in the St. Louis deal.
The bad money would be idiotic. It should be like targeting of draft picks, I would imagine.
And like prospects. They need to get Dominic Bach or Robert Thomas, not freaking Tage Thompson.
Replenish the pool, whether that's immediate prospects or first round picks in the next year or whatever.
They need both, to be honest. Like, if they're we'll use the Avs as an example. The Avs look at it and they say, okay, well, we're gonna pluck Sam Reinhart out of that thing. You know, that's where you're having either a Shane Powers, a Martin Kaut conversation. Plus, you're having this year's first round pick.
I think that's where the conversation starts.
Definitely.
You're probably adding significantly to that.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I would say a guy off the roster as well.
Yeah.
Whether that's Jost or Comfer, Graves, one of those types of guys. Sure. A guy that is, I would say, 26 and under. Still has some RFA years and can contribute immediately, yeah.
Which, from a roster standpoint, the Avs could absolutely do.
Definitely.
If they're bringing in Reinhart.
The Avs could easily make that package work.
Yep.
Because they'll have the two obvious guys where they're like, hell to the no.
Right. You cannot
and
have
Newhook and Byram. And then
everyone else.
If it's Timmins and then a first, you're not then it's probably like Jost. Because you're not giving up a guy that's been better in the NHL than that.
Right. Sure. I'm fine with that. If you're giving up a D prospect, you're also definitely not giving up a D player.
Yeah. 100%.
So
that's kind of the focus that Buffalo should have, because if they were to do that deal, they get Connor Timmins, who walks in and immediately starts on that defense next year in the NHL. Yep. They get a first round pick. Again, it's the end of the first round, but that gives them 2 years in a row with 2 first rounders. That's not the worst way to rebuild the organization's talent pool.
Not really the way the Avs went about it, but we've seen franchises like Toronto just get 1 billion picks, spray and pray, and hit on a couple of them, and all of a sudden you replenish the ranks real quick.
I think well, and it's how Ottawa has rejuvenated their system as quickly as they have, is that they've had multiple years of first round picks where it's like you break down every single trade that they make and you're like, you know what, there's a lot of iffy moves in here. You look at the entire picture and you look at the way that they have dominated the draft board the last couple of years. And to be honest with you, yes, losing out on the 4th overall pick that they gave to Colorado for Bo and Byram, that one hurts, but they've mitigated it as well as you possibly can. And the fact that they're gonna respond to that with 2 top 5 picks this year, like, that's how it's done.
Their big one that hurt was giving picks away, not acquiring them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as that's concerned, I think that's the way Buffalo should go. You know, maybe they should take a real hard look at their scouting core or whoever's making the decisions on the players they draft in the first round. But
yeah, and I don't know who's been running their draft board. If it's the assistant GM who also was fired today, then that's a good step forward for them.
Sense. Yeah,
but they definitely have to. They have to take advantage of the opportunity in front of them right now. If they want to have kind of a soft reset, get rid of a guy like Reinhart, maybe move out Middlestat in another like Nylander style deal where it's prospect for prospect. Fine. But they need to commit to, I think what they need to do, they need to commit to youth and resist the willingness of the Pajulas to spend money.
Yeah, I definitely think the commitment to youth has to happen. No more acquiring Wayne Simmons. No more giving long-term contracts to dudes about to hit their 30s.
Yeah, stay out of like when Taylor Hall becomes a free agent. Don't be like, hey, Taylor Hall.
Yeah, don't convince yourself that that's going to help you.
And give him $10 million over 6 years because
even if he's good for the first couple of years of that deal, doesn't even matter for Buffalo.
Right. Like, of course, you could see a world where they get lottery luck, right?
The Taylor Hall magic. They actually should go get Taylor Hall to get first overall picks. I see. Okay.
No, I'm saying because the lottery will happen before they have a chance to do that.
I know. This year,
I'm saying, what if they end up with the first overall pick? They get Lafreniere, they sign Taylor Hall, and all of a sudden they've got Eichel and Hall and Reinhart and Skinner and Lafreniere, and you're like, wow, that's a really good top 6.
You can't let yourself think like that, though. You have to cross that bridge when you get there, because that's how you burn an organization to the ground, thinking that's going to happen.
Well, and then they end up there, and then they're just the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, right.
Without Connor Hellebuck.
Got him.
Well, like that's the difference, right? Because they still don't have a goaltender. They don't have an answer in net. I don't know that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is ever going to be the answer in net, despite his unbelievably awesome name.
Assuming they don't win the lottery, I mean, they need everything, but Askarov on the table, maybe. You want to turn an organization around with one player, it's goaltender, man.
That's their carry price.
Yep.
Like that becomes their carry price. Like, please save us.
Right, it does.
That
100%.
would be, man, when we do our next mock draft.
Have a real hard look at that.
Yeah. Depending on where if they land in the top 3, then of course.
Different story for sure.
Yeah. But if say 3 teams jump them and they end up all the way down at like 10.
Gotta think about it. Either way.
Man. Anyway.
I think it's about time we got out of here for the day as we're starting to get off track. But you can be certain whatever Buffalo ends up doing, there are going to be teams calling, looking for something, trying to get something done.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen?
Oh, good name. Good name for sure.
I'm assuming that's the one he was asking
I think it's a safe bet that that's the one. Either way, we're going to get out of here for the day. Keep an eye on Buffalo. If you hear any rumors, I mean, maybe there's something to them, maybe there's not. But as always, thank you for listening, and you know the drill. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Have some cool guests coming on this week, so looking forward to doing some pretty cool
that's
shows.
Right. We have guests on Wednesday, and we will have a guest on Friday for Free Skate Friday.
So there you go, a little tease for you. Something to keep your eye out for. But before we get out of here, I'm going to keep reminding everyone, because if I don't, I'll forget myself. Father's Day is coming up this weekend. It's happening. And Manscaped could be the perfect gift for your dad if he's got a lot of hair to deal with. Their Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer can trim every single hair on his body if that's what he needs. And it also comes with an amazing package, including a carrying case, multiple different formulas for deodorant, spray-on toner, you name it. Sure, you can take care of your junk below the belt. Great. Highly recommend you do that. But you can also take care of your beard. You can trim up your sideburns, your hair a little bit. The chest hair, I got a little bit there, not too much. But, you can take care of everything with manscaped.com. And when you order,
dudes trim chest hair?
Absolutely. I don't.
I feel like that's like a wax or all or nothing job. I can't imagine a dude has ever just taken like a thing and been like, me.
No, they 100% do, man. You haven't seen those dudes at the beach with like designs carved into them and stuff?
Okay, I mean, well, that's a little bit different. But
is it though?
I think it is. It's different to like trim your chest hair versus I'm carving a design into my hair to send a certain artistic message.
Maybe you're just not a hairy person, AJ.
I mean, are you serious?
Either way, whatever you need to trim, Manscaped has you covered, and you get 20% off plus free shipping when you use code DNVR20 at manscaped.com. Order today and take care of not just your balls, but your entire body.